Welcome to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor, your one-stop shop when it comes to animation news and commentary. I'm Drew's co-host, entertainment writer Jim Hill, and he and I are recording this on Friday, July 9th, 2021. Drew, has the classic car show started up again at Bob's Big Boy in Toluca Lake?
Yes, you mean our office down the street from where I live?
Yes. Well, I did. That's the thing. I miss our office. Whenever I'm out in LA, Drew and I at least do one meal at the Bob's Big Boy. And that's kind of challenging on Friday nights because they do this amazing classic car show, which is great. But the downside is there is no parking. So it makes it a little challenging to get in there and get your Bob's Big Boy and slide into a Formica booth and all that.
Yes. I miss it. I haven't been since the shutdown. I went once where they were only it was actually kind of fun. They were doing like a classic drive-in, like a drive-up.
Yes. When the pandemic hit and everything shut down in March of last year, Bob's Big Boy, their solution to this problem was starting in late April, early May, they reintroduced car hop service. I mean, you'd order food, they'd go in and get it, and then bring it back out to you in your car. That made it difficult to do the car show because you needed every slot in the parking lot for customers.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my other question here. They've got themselves branded as Bob's Big Boy Burbank. But isn't Bob's Big Boy in Toluca Lake?
Yeah, I mean, that's a weird distinction because the Gary Marshall Theater across the street, I think, also brands itself as Burbank. But I sort of think that Burbank doesn't start until you get over the highway into, the Olive and Alameda.
I love that you mentioned the Gary Marshall Theater. I actually went there because it was the same thing. Well, what does that say? And here's how they actually identify their location. The former Falcon Theater is located where the heart of the Burbank Media District meets the village of Toluca Lake. Other places, if you poke around, Toluca Lake is described as a neighborhood, but it's also a neighborhood that has its very own Chamber of Commerce. You actually lived in Toluca Lake.
I still live in Toluca Lake. I'm just a little further down the road. I mean, Toluca Lake doesn't end until Lancashire. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a little, I don't know. That's interesting. I didn't realize there was this kind of push and pull.
The weird part of it is that the city of Los Angeles absolutely insists that Toluca Lake is all inside of the borders of the city of Los Angeles, where, of course, Burbank is like, the Burbank Media District. So if you want to poke at this, or some of our other Southern California listeners, if somebody can answer definitively about what is Toluca Lake? Is it a village? Is it a neighborhood? I love it because of the old Hollywood ties. I mean, did you know Ronald Reagan also lived in this neighborhood at one point?
Oh, is that why I get a kind of chill up my spine occasionally while out and about?
Okay, well, off to a good start here, offending half of our listeners. Okay, well, if anybody has a definitive answer there, we'd love to have that. So,
well, the building that I live in is an old building from the 50s, and apparently all of the stars once lived here, and there was an intercom system, and it was like Jerry Lewis and those kind of guys.
Yeah, you were telling me.
Yeah, and so every night at 6, they would turn on the intercom system and they would start playing music, and everyone would exit their apartment with a martini and have kind of a party every night. Yeah,
I love that story.
Yeah, so
okay.
That's kind of the Toluca Lake that I like to think about.
No, that's cool. Okay, well, all right. Lots of news this week, so we should probably get to that. So, news portion of this episode of Fine Tuning is brought to you by Storybook Destinations, trusted travel partner of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. For a worry-free travel experience, please book online with StorybookDestinations.com. Okay, as always, a couple of trailers dropped. First one was Addams Family 2, which, Drew, I've learned the hard way not to necessarily bash the Addams Family franchise, because if you remember when the first trailers came out in 2019, I was pretty vocal about how bad I thought they looked, and they looked like it was the preliminary lighting that they hadn't finalized them or whatever, and that film, which cost MGM $24 million to make, then went on to make $204 million worldwide, so it was a hit. So what the hell do I know?
Right.
When I look at this new trailer with its family goes on RV trip around the country, it's one of those things where it's like, maybe that's actually is going to connect with some audience somewhere.
Right.
But of course, the wild card here is that just last month, we saw Hotel Transylvania Transformania shift out of its July 23rd release date and then move to October 1st, which is, of course, the exact same day that Adam's Family 2 is going to be released. And both of them are macabre family comedies, and both of them, at least these two sequels, are basically road pictures.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Then neither one is budging, so...
Yeah, that's the weird part. You'd have to assume that there's going to be cannibalization.
Right.
And it'd just be interesting to see if somebody does, in fact, decide to blink.
Well, is there a scenario that Vivo does so well on Netflix that they just put it on Netflix? They put Hotel Transylvania on Netflix? They're going to have 3 movies this year that have debuted on Netflix, so I don't know.
How close are we to Vivo debuting on Netflix?
I still haven't gotten a definitive release date, but everyone keeps telling me summer. So, I mean, there's not that much of summer left. So, I don't know.
It's so weird you say that, because other trailer that just dropped within the past day or so, the Marvel What If trailer, did you notice that doesn't have a locked-in date either? It's August 2021?
That does have a date, is August 11th.
August 11th. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. I did not see that.
Yeah.
I'm just fascinated by the notion of these giant corporations with all of them so heavily invested in their subscription streaming services. And it's like, when's that coming out? It's like, don't know yet. Let me get back to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think things are still very much in flux.
All right. Well, the reason I mentioned Vivo is we got our Encanto trailer. And of course, Vivo is the other project that Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote music for. And I want to say the teaser trailer there is pretty upfront about the fact that that's a musical.
How far we've come from Frozen, when they did everything but bury the I mean, if somebody asked somebody at Disney, they'd probably say, I don't know what you're talking about. There may be songs, there may not be songs. Listen, I'm not going to tell you, but at least this is...
Okay, which brings me to our teaser trailer for Encanto. Kristen Anderson Lopez, wife of Bobby Lopez, the team that wrote the music for Frozen, tweeted out yesterday, I am so excited to watch Disney Animation's Encanto, the music, the horticulture, the lighting. Lin-Manuel is a master musical storyteller. But when you look at that trailer, do you get any hint, really, that it's a musical?
Yeah, I mean, there is a song in the trailer. You had your speakers on while you watched the trailer.
I did, but there's one thing to have someone singing in the background where you're piling on the imagery.
Right.
But I didn't get the vibe that this was a straightforward musical.
Yeah. Yeah. It also makes me wonder what the Lopez's are working on for Disney. Because there's got to be something.
Also, there was the news that broke. It's the folks over at Discussing Film who actually managed to break this story. It's the Don Hall and the Quinn Young project that's supposedly coming in fall 2022.
Yes. I also have some exciting Disney animation news that I forgot to tell you, Jim, which is that Corey Loftus is back at Walt Disney Animation Studios.
Oh, wow.
He left to go to Netflix, and he is one of my favorite character/production designers of the last few years. He did Wreck-It Ralph 2 and Zootopia, and he is an absolute genius, and now he's back at Animation Studios. I wonder if they need someone like him for subsequent Zootopia films. Just theorizing here, Jim. But
there we go. All right, just slide back to Encanto. We had In the Heights drop, and that was an HBO Max thing too, wasn't it? Okay. Films would have killed for the reviews that got. And then it comes out and it doesn't do the business that folks are expecting. Do you think maybe that impacted Disney's decisions about how to promote Encanto? Because face it, we're only just getting our first poster now, and we're getting this trailer that does a pretty good job of sort of sketching out the other members of the family, but not necessarily our lead character.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was also In the Heights was also embroiled in a very mild controversy as well.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, you think that they were maybe wanting to drift off the good buzz of In the Heights and now are kind of having to walk it back a little bit?
I wonder. I mean, this is one of those trailers where they're hiding the story
Right.
because they don't want to tip their hand too early. Nobody's better at promoting films than Disney. I don't want to say I'm intrigued. I'm actually kind of confused.
Right.
I really want this one to work. But at the same time, this whole notion of we're making a musical and for God's sake, don't let them know we're making a musical. When they get here in the theaters and we have their money, then they can find out it's a musical.
Right. I did read some plot synopsis that says that the main character has to go out on some kind of quest to save the family or something. So I think we literally just got the tip of the iceberg. And I'll be interested to see if all this animation makes it into the final movie, because as you know,
well,
a lot of times there's some test footage, like the Coco diorama sequence that they showed at D23 all those years ago.
Yeah, I definitely want that. I think they called it the shoebox.
Yes.
I want to see that again. It was amazing. Speaking of Disney-related stuff, for all you Mickey Mouse fans out there, we've got Mickey the Brave debuting July 16th on Disney Junior. This primetime special is kicking off their new series, Mickey Mouse Funhouse, which I guess is the latest iteration of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, a Mickey-based show aimed at a younger audience, which is very, very different than what Paul Reddish is doing with Mickey. And by the way, we should remind folks that Season 2 of The Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse also debuts this month, July 28th, just 12 days after Mickey the Brave. And then we have the Star Wars Vision trailer for Disney Plus. What did you think of that?
I really like that. I'm really excited about that. I love that they actually highlighted the different animation studios that are providing the animation for the different episodes. And, you know, it's a nice different take on Star Wars. We need some different ideas in the Star Wars galaxy. And I thought it was interesting that that was announced the same week that they announced basically that Zack Snyder was taking his Star Wars movie that he had pitched Disney and making it at Netflix under another title.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of interesting Star Wars-y related stuff this week.
Speaking of which, as soon as we wrap up here, I have to go over and watch the latest episode of The Bad Batch.
That's right.
From this point, I guess we've got 3 episodes left in season 1.
Yeah.
that there are other seasons coming our way.
Yeah, if you're tired of Bad Batch now, buckle up, because we've got a long way to go.
Okay. All right. And we talked briefly a little bit ago about Marvel What If. And face it, we've had some imagery from the show previously. What did you think of this sort of full-blown take on it?
I thought it was very exciting and cool. And I love that a lot of the same crew members from Troll Hunters worked on this season. So, you know, Jim, I still miss my Troll Hunters. So this will be, you know, a nice scratch that itch. Yeah.
Okay. Another show, the Centaur World trailer dropped last month. That one's over at Netflix. Did you catch the trailer for this one?
I've seen the show, actually.
Oh, wow. Have you? Okay,
yeah,
so
I don't know how much I can talk about it, but it's a fascinating concept. Should I say what the synopsis is?
Well, sure.
So it starts out almost as like a Mulan type, you know, very serious kind of action show with this young girl and her kind of war horse. And through magical circumstances, the horse is transported into this kind of pseudo My Little Pony-ish universe where there's all these singing creatures that are very bizarre. And so the warhorse and these creatures sort of set off to figure out what happened and to get the warhorse back to the kind of like more naturalistic world. And that's kind of the setup. So, yeah.
Okay, so we've got folks who worked on Star versus the Force of Evil on this show. And I have to say, from the trailer, it does have, you know, sort of a weird Owl House meets Amphibia vibe going for it. You know, the whole questy, learning as you go in a magical world feel. Having watched an episode or two, is that kind of the right wheelhouse for the show?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yeah, I think so. I will say I was not as immediately taken by it like I was Amphibia and Owl House. I think Amphibia now is like one of my favorite animated shows that's ever been on Disney Channel. But and it could evolve. Like Amphibia is about to enter its third season. I totally think that I could see Centaur World sort of casting that spell over the long run. So I'm very curious to see what you'll think about it, Jim.
Okay. And you mentioned My Little Pony. We've got Megan McCarthy, who worked on the My Little Pony franchise. She's the story editor on this. And you mentioned the songs. We've got Toby Chu composing I guess every episode includes songs, like multiple songs. Though we're talking about My Little Pony, and you just got to see Space Jam: A New Legacy, which has every character known to man in it, but I think they have to have a tie to Warner's. So you did not see any My Little Ponies in among the thousands upon thousands of characters, right? Or...
I thought I might have spotted the Bigfoot from Smallfoot, Jim. That was my big takeaway.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You'll have to watch it and tell me if I'm seeing anything. I did not take anything before I saw Space Jam, but I think those in the audience that do might have an enhanced experience. But
okay, well, we'll tell you what, folks. On the second half of today's show, Drew is going to talk about your experience actually just getting on to the Warner's lot to see Space Jam: A New Legacy was something of an adventure. And then we also have a surprise for you. We got the chance to chat with the director of New Legacy.
Yes, Malcolm Lee, who...
Malcolm Lee.
Malcolm Lee, who has a very, very interesting story to tell.
Give us a few minutes here, folks, and we'll be back with that half of the show.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for this day.
What I bought? A new Blink Mini 2K Plus smart security camera. What I got? 2K clarity sharp enough to see every detail of home when I'm away. Plus audio like I'm in the room, not with my bestie traveling to another city. Plus easy plug-in setup to install faster than skipping through podcast ads. But you'd never skip ads, right? Plus, I got all of this for just $49.99. Blink Mini 2K Plus. Mini camera, max performance. Shop now at amazon.com/blink.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
I guess we should talk a little bit about the first Space Jam movie, because there was kind of a weird path to the launch of this franchise. I mean...
If we must, Jim, if we must.
How many movies can say, where did your idea come from? Well, it came from a Nike ad. The Air Jordan ad, which aired in 1992, and then Aerospace Jordan, which aired in 93. And I want to say those ads both initially appeared on the Super Bowl, but they were directed by Joe Pytka. And evidently Warner Brothers fought them every step of the way. They didn't like the idea of making Bugs Bunny contemporary. They were concerned about how this was going to work. And then, of course, these commercials become huge hits, and that actually they were able to launch merch. And so that ends up with Ivan Reitman. He's on a plane. He's having a conversation with a Nike executive. And by the time the plane lands, they've agreed that they're going to make a movie with Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny. And it's only then that Ivan Reitman calls, it's like, well, wait a minute, make a movie with live actors and animation. Maybe I better talk to somebody who's done this before. So he calls Robert Zemeckis, and Robert Zemeckis is like, oh God, don't make this movie. Roger Rabbit damn near killed me. But by then it's too late. It's kind of moving forward. In fact, poor Joe Pytka only found out that the commercials you made, we're making a movie and we're starting in 4 months. So get over here, get to work, which is kind of sort of the story that Malcolm tells about his time on Space Jam: A New Legacy. But
well, and what's interesting is that Malcolm's cousin is Spike Lee, And Spike
Yeah.
directed those famous commercials with Michael Jordan back in the 90s as well. So there's
He
a
did.
weird...
He did.
Yeah.
Doesn't Spike actually make a cameo in Hair Jordan or Aerospace Jordan?
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah.
So the original Space Jam comes out November of 96, costs $80 million to make, makes $250 million worldwide. So it's like, okay, let's do a sequel. And how many versions were proposed? I mean, we got the Jackie Chan version, Spy Jam. There was supposed to be Race Jam with Jeff Gordon. There was supposed to be Skate Jam with Tony Hawk. Finally, in 2014, they get serious about a really for real new Space Jam movie, which again, Drew got to see earlier this week.
Yes. Yeah. On Tuesday. I got to see it in the big theater on the lot, which is always a treat when you get to see on the Warner Brothers lot. Yeah.
Can you talk about the various hoops you had to jump through to get onto the Warner's lot to see Space Jam: A New Legacy?
Well, Jim loves the minutia of this, but basically you have to go through a program that's a proprietary program that Warner Brothers set up to kind of prove that you don't have COVID, that you don't have any symptoms, you haven't been in contact with anyone. So you do this series of questions, and then you're sort of given a green light. And this is about probably the fourth or fifth time I've been back to the lot during COVID. I mean, just this year, obviously I was not at the height of COVID. Nobody was going anywhere, but, you have to kind of show this thing to the security guards. And I would always do it 10 minutes before I got there and then have to redo it in front of the guy. And I mean, it's a crazy process that you have to kind of clear to go in. And then I was telling you that they actually had us park at the new parking lot for the studio tour.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's sort of on the other side of the, where the New York Film Academy building is over there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's on the other side of that. Again, is it in Toluca Lake? Is it in Burbank?
There we go. There we go. Okay. It's a theme, folks. Okay.
It's a theme. But then I had to kind of figure out how to get to the theater from that new parking lot, which was fun. And I made it. I mean, I got there, but it was an experience. It was I definitely earned my my screening on that day.
Well, now,
sure.
Weren't you also saying what was kind of bizarre, given the trip you made across the lot, how much of the lot is in fact featured in Space Jam: A New Legacy? Or
oh yeah. So there's a sizable portion of the movie. Basically, when LeBron James gets sort of abducted into this serververse world, he is on the lot, sort of getting pitched this thing, and so. There's a lot of the movie takes place on the lot. They go to the lot looking for him. I mean, it's a lot of the Warner Brothers lot featured. And then, of course, it's also in the new Warner Brothers logo, which I don't know if you've seen that yet, Jim, but the one that kind of swirls around the lot and then goes to the water tower.
No.
Oh, yeah. See, Jim, you need to be watching I guess In the Heights just left HBO Max, but you could have seen it on that. So that was fun. It was like, seeing, yourself in the movie a little bit while watching it there. So it was a lot of fun.
Which now brings us to, thanks to the folks at Warner's, we got the opportunity to interview Malcolm D. Lee, the director of Space Jam: A New Legacy, who didn't honestly have a whole lot of lead time on this, did he?
Malcolm, I just wanted to ask you, since this is your first sort of, visual effects heavy film, and there are visual effects in every scene almost, what that experience was like for you, and what was that learning curve like for you, especially because you're coming into the project later than you would normally be.
Yeah, it was pretty daunting, never having had this extensive experience, dealing with the visual effects. But the great thing was, I had a great ILM team to, guide me and show me the ropes and educate me on what all, it took, not only, during production, but, obviously throughout post. Grady, Kofer, and Kim Locasio are just, fantastic director and producer. And so, it was a big learning curve for me, but, fortunately the 20 years of experience I've had as being a director allowed me to step into that role and say, okay, well, these are just storytelling tools. And in the best possible way. You put something on screen, you're like, okay, that's great, but then they're going to make it even greater. So
Right.
that was a real education and just a real joy to know that next time I do something like this, I know what to expect.
So now are you like, all right, I'm going to direct a Transformers movie? No. I mean, is that like...
That far.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
2 years ago this week, you came on board, and this thing had been in development 5 years at that point. Can you talk a little bit about that moment where it's like, get on board this giant thing involving all of these IPs?
Oh boy. It was again a very daunting task, a daunting ask, and like very surprising because I didn't see myself doing a movie like this. The basketball movie I had in my head was, because I'm a basketball purist, I love the game, I love to play, I love to watch it. Was more like He Got Game or loving basketball, not Bugs Bunny, on a basketball court. You know what I mean? But when they approached me, I said, well, all right, let me see. And my wife and a lot of the confidants were like, you got to do it. They want you to do it. I'm kind of like, but I don't know anything about visual effects or animation. But, the studio executives were like, look, you're going to have great support. We need your sensibility, to give us, tone, and we need coverage, and we need humor, and we need storytelling. And that I could do. And so, again, once I kind of understood what was going to be ahead of me, I can't say it was easy. It was just like, all right, well, you accepted the challenge. Let's go and do it. And literally had 4 days to prepare. And wow. So I was preparing I was prepping and shooting and developing all at the same time.
Wow. Well, when the movie starts, the Looney Tunes are sort of scattered to the four winds, and they're in these other IP. My favorite was the Fury Road with the Roadrunner. But I was wondering how you came up with these scenarios. Were there other ones that didn't make the cut? Could you just talk about that process?
Yeah, I think when the Toon Gathering montage morphed and shifted and changed quite a bit, in some instances we had full on scenes for all of them, either animated, fully, we had a possibility of doing Thundercats, finding Sylvester and Thundercats possibly, we were looking at Friends, The Bachelor. And then it was like, we can't. First of all, some of these things just are ridiculous. Let's not play ourselves. And then it was like, okay, what fits in seamlessly? What can be quick? What can be funny? And be part of a montage, not like these whole scenes, because otherwise it's just going to drag down. So it was finding that balance of what was going to work. Matrix was an easy decision. Granny being Trinity was great, and then having Speedy do bullet time, and finding Roadrunner and Coyote in Fury Road was just also great. Yeah, I mean, one of my favorites is Elmer Fudd and Austin Powers. I mean, it's just perfect. It just works. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of trial and error. Where your animation editor Chris Cartagena would come in and just try to let's superimpose it. Let's see how this works. But it takes a while and to get right.
Well, you brought up Thundercats, and there's so many amazing characters watching the game too. I mean, I was furiously writing notes, Frankenstein Jr. and Ghost, Space Ghost and all this stuff. What was that process like of figuring out who was going to watch the game, and how much of it was you and how much of it was some, nerd at ILM going, oh, we should have the Animaniacs or whatever?
It was a combination,
Okay.
A lot of people, a lot of live action, characters, people dressing up in costume and makeup and hair, and they were fantastic. A lot of times your background talent is uninspired in their performance, or they're overdoing it. But these people were great. They were there for weeks on end, and had to report at 3:00 in the morning and do hair and makeup and all that kind of stuff. And then when it came to the post production process, it was a lot. Let's throw everything up against the up against the wall and see what sticks. And so I wasn't familiar with Space Ghost, but huge Magilla Gorilla fan, huge Captain Caveman fan, loved the Flintstones, loved the Jetsons, loved Penelope Pitstop, so it was and then I had never even seen the Iron Giant movie, but we knew we had to have him. So yeah, I mean, it was just a bunch of stuff that we said, okay, like what's gonna like have like the most kind of impact? You know, the Gremlins. There was a lot that went into it, and we said, okay, this is gonna be great.
Right.
This film is kind of a Valentine to the history of Warner Brothers Studio, and you have a lot of executives who worked this company for a lot of years who, could, hey, I made that movie. Could you slide that in there? Did you get any of that, or?
Yeah, we got somebody, the guy that wanted the Hangover in there. We said, no, can't have the Hangover unless you can get me Zach Galifianakis. No, not really. I think there was some that it's a tricky thing because you don't want to be like, a salesman for the studio. You don't want to be so obvious. We're going to be meta. We want to be so, we don't want to go overboard with it. We want to be clever. We want to be fun. We want to have, we want to be funny. And so just even, LeBron passing by, Harry Potter world and, Hufflepuff, I knew it. It's like, it's such a fun little thing that you don't expect from LeBron. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And then, of course, you got their signature stuff like DC characters and whatnot. So we wanted to make sure we did that. We toyed with it doing it live action, but it was gonna, be costly and time consuming. So, because if you're gonna do it, you got to do it right. You can't just throw just anything in there. Again, these things went through numerous iterations, numerous.
Well, I was going to ask about the live action and animation sort of ratio, because in the first movie, Michael Jordan comes down into a 2D world and he's still a human. But in this one, when LeBron is in the 2D world, he's a cartoon too. Was that just a scheduling thing? Like getting him on the phone is a lot easier than having him in the studio? Or what was the thinking behind that?
I think we wanted to have that opportunity. And again, that decision had predated me.
Okay.
But I love the idea of animating LeBron. Like I thought that was such a great, clever idea. And and yes, what happens is it does give us a lot more freedom. But tell that to the animators who are like, we've got a deadline, we got to hit. You know what I mean? So I think there was a desire for us to have him be live action, like in the spaceship and things like that, wherever we could get him to be live action. But there were some scheduling conflicts. But we're fortunate we got it in Casablanca and over in Fury Road, in The Matrix. So that all it all tracks and makes good sense.
Right.
Speaking of which, though, there's that great gag when he arrives in the animated world. That I'm smaller than Kevin Hart. Is that kind of a nod to your pal from night school?
It is. I don't think I even told him about it. I'm sure he's heard about it by now. He's gonna want some kind of restitution. You're like, hey Kevin, come on, it's a joke. It's funny. Before I even worked with Kevin, I both my Girls Trip movie has a Kevin Hart reference, and now this one does. So I love Kevin. I know he can take a joke. He dishes them out. So good.
Can you talk about the design process of bringing these characters into 3D? And I don't think they've ever been visualized in this way. Okay, yeah. Can you talk about that and working with ILM and what that process was like?
That's one of the things that we were kind of playing around with and talking about, and we had an early iteration of Al G who turned the tunes he was saying look, you guys have got to modernize. This was an early iteration of the script, and we've got to, and so he was able to change them from 2D to 3D with the snap of his finger. And I was like, oh, I like that aspect. So that was in the back of my mind. And when we started looking at what the tunes could be on the basketball court, I was like, okay, this would be a good thing for us to have. And so the process of turning them from 2D to 3D was a long and detailed one, in that what the kind of charm that the tunes have in 2D, not easy to replicate. So there's a whole boot camp that happened with Devin Crane, who was our animated supervisors, animated directors. There's a great liaison between the two, and went to ILM and said, okay, this is how you got to do this. This is the basis, and they've got to be more expressive. They got to have creases here. You got to shape the neck right. You've got to do this. So there was a lot of development that went into translating the two, and it wasn't easy. And sometimes the first iteration was kind of ooh, that's kind of scary looking. That's not going to work. So
right.
Keep massaging it and making it better. And so the end result I think is amazing. And even when we were doing visual effects reviews, it was Devin would be there okay, you know what, let's tweak here, let's tweak there, let's make this a little bit better. and it was always right on time. You know, it just made that much of a difference.
Was it somewhat like the journey of LeBron in this movie, where you had to let them be really animated? Because I feel like if you are translating anything, and those guys are like always striving for realism, right? So to like push that wackiness even in the CGI, right?
Absolutely. That was part of it, but it's more than just like, even eyes bulging out or like, necks being stretched or whatever. It's like just the subtlety of a smile, there's such detail that's involved with that, of course I have a humongous, respect and appreciation for the process now that I didn't have before. And then looking at it and making sure that we were true to those characters. We didn't want to do Sonic the Hedgehog. We didn't want to get caught doing, what they had at first had done, and we like get burned for it. We knew that might be a possibility, but like once we kept, tinkering away at it and chiseling away, it was all about like, making sure that we were true to, who these characters originally were.
You were well into production when the news broke about Zendaya for Lola. When did that sort of enter the mix?
Well, we were in talks with Zendaya for a while. And, she really was a fan of the movie. We showed her to her and she was like, oh my God, I gotta be a part of that. And we thought like, what a great representation of Lola. Here's a young lady who's taking control of her life, control of her brand, control of her talking points. Very powerful, very feminine, and the embodiment of what we thought Lola should be. So she was the perfect person, and like she's having a great moment right now. And we love the fact that she loved the movie, and so. We all these things go in Hollywood with negotiations, and it all worked out for the best. At the end of the day, she was, fantastic. She did a great job, embodying that character.
Well, one of the interesting things about this movie is that it takes place in a world where Space Jam exists or existed, right? Because young LeBron has the backpack. Were you a huge fan of the original film, and was that always an element that you wanted to bring to it? This kind of meta awareness of the original?
I tell you what, I had not seen the original.
Really?
Until 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'd seen bits and pieces of it, on cable and stuff like that. But but when that movie came out, it was like 96. I was just finishing film school. I was wondering why I wasn't making feature films at that point. Why was I not Orson Welles and having made my first movie? Why wasn't I John Singleton and not have I made my first movie yet? So that wasn't my focus. And, that was essentially to me a family or a kid's movie. So, for me, my love of the Looney Tunes began when I was, a young child, on Saturday mornings, like watching the tunes on Saturday morning, having a bowl of cereal and, staring at, them do their antics. So I had a great love for the Looney Tunes. I have a great love for basketball. So melding the two, again, not knowing it was the movie I needed to make or that I was going to make eventually, became, Space Jam: A New Legacy. And, we wanted to make nods to, to it, but we needed to be our own animal as well.
This is the second Space Jam movie to not actually be set in space, but I have a theory that the space in Space Jam 2 is cyberspace.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hey, look, I'm in space now. You're in space. You're in it. But that is in inner space. Yes. Definitely is cyberspace. No question.
Okay, great. There's also a great cameo in this movie where Rick and Morty kind of come and visit them, right? Can you talk about what that was like? Were Justin and Dan involved in this? I mean, what did they think about the whole process?
Yeah, no, they loved it. They voiced the characters and everything. I mean, it was like, look, I don't watch Rick and Morty. I'm not unfamiliar with them, but I knew they were very popular. I knew that people really liked them. And I think they're, really, really fun, irreverent character. And what better way to do it with Taz? So, yeah, I mean, we pitched a deck. We really liked the idea and how it fit into the montage. We pitched it to them, and they were like, okay, cool. We'll do it.
Wow. That's amazing.
After 2 years of dealing with green screen and animation, and I know, if we go over to IMDb, you're associated with Hot Wheels at this point, but are you looking at for a palate cleanser in there? Something where two people in a room, just a couch, something like that, or?
Every time I do a movie, I'm on set. I'm like, I can't wait to start writing again. I get away from all these people. When I'm writing, I'm like, I got to get to set. So that's how it goes. And whether it be a palate cleanser or not, I don't know. And by the way, I don't even know that I got to talk to whoever's doing Hot Wheels because it's not me. Like, I don't know anything about it. But you're like the fifth interviewer that said, oh yeah, you're doing this Hot Wheels thing. And I'm like, I better start looking at my IMDb to find out what's happening there. But you know what? It's possible. I am doing a limited series for Peacock next, based on my first movie, The Best Man. So that'll happen, before I do anything else. But that said, I would certainly embrace doing a CGI movie again, a heavily VFX movie again. I do an animation movie again. I really love the process. It's so creative and so inventive, and it offers a world of possibilities. So I really do like the possibility of doing it.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us. The movie was so fun, and it was great to get to talk to you today.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Take care.
We should have asked him when he finished working on these things, because with these films with so many effects, sometimes you are a week, 10 days out, and you're still waiting for shots to be dropped into the film.
Right.
I hope he gets a nice rest before, well, if he is in fact working on Hot Wheels, or if he's just going to go off and do something else. I guess we'll have to wait and see, and I guess a lot of that depends on how Space Jam: A New Legacy does at the box office, or over on HBO Max starting next week.
Right.
So, speaking of next week, we'll get another show, another fine tuning out the door then, folks. But until that time, if you're looking for something to listen to, there's nothing better out there than Light the Fuse, Drew's wonderful podcast about the Mission Impossible film franchise. Have you now officially wrapped up the Brian De Palma stuff, or do we still have some more?
The 2-part Brian De Palma episodes are up, but I think he liked him enough that he could come back. So that's my that's my goal, is to get him back on the show. So
that would be killer.
Those were a lot of fun, and we've got a lot of great episodes coming up. So check them out.
Okay. Can't wait. And also on our side of the fence, we've got Disney Dish with Len Testa. We've got Marvel Us Disney that I do with Aaron Adams. Likewise, Universal joint with Dustin Fuse. So hopefully we'll finally get that out the door. And if you want to hand over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that would be helpful. Folks want to keep tabs on what you're up to social media wise, Drew. How do they do that?
Drew Tailored, like a tailored shirt, on Twitter and Instagram.
You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook at Jim Hill Media News. So we'll be back with more stories next time.